So now that we have this, I'm going to go ahead and give him one subdivision. I'm going to step down. I'm going to turn on freeze subdivision. And how many of you guys are familiar with freeze subdivision? Or we played around with freeze subdivision? Because sometimes I do this workflow and people are completely unfamiliar with what I'm doing, and they're like, what did you just do? And I find out they subdivide with freeze subdivision on, and they sculpt with freeze subdivision on. I'm like, what are you doing? You're ruining and destroying your project. Okay. Well, Justin, I thank you for letting me know so I can give you a little explanation. All right, so I gave this one subdivision, right? Why did I give it one subdivision? The reason why I gave it one subdivision is because the way subdivisions work, inside that subdivision, like this upper subdivision, we have all the points from the first subdivision, including additional points. It's bringing us up to 1.3 million polys, right? So when I step down to my first subdivision and I select freeze subdivision, it locks in the position of those points, or it remembers the position of the points in that next subdivision. So you need freeze subdivision on because there's certain functions inside of ZBrush that require you to have no subdivisions, right? Like using an insert mesh brush or doing anything with the topology requires that you have no subdivisions. So freeze subdivision or layers, thank you, Manuel, layers for sure, right? So it requires that you have no subdivisions. So actually, what do you mean by that, Manuel, for layers? I'm like, when I said, yeah, and layers, but wait, what do you mean? Oh, you're saying that you can't have layers on. Yeah, you have to have all the layers baked. Yeah. When you have the layer, yep. Well, when layers are turned on, you can't. You can no longer subdivide. You can no longer edit your topology. You need to bake all your layers before you do that. So if you guys have used layers for some of your detail, you need to make sure that you have no layers before you go through this process. You need to bake all those layers down. Oh, lovely quick save here. Let me make sure I set that up higher so we're not waiting all day. All right. So now we have freeze subdivision on. Justin, do you kind of understand what this is doing now? Well, I'm going to move forward. You let me know if you need more elaboration on it, and I'll elaborate on it for you more. Okay, cool. All right, so hopefully it'll make sense by the time I'm done. So I'm going to freeze subdivision. I'm going to go to Dynamesh, and I'm going to drop my Dynamesh resolution. Since I give it one subdivision, a subdivision is 4 times the previous subdivision, right? I started with 330. It brought me up to like 1.2 million polys on my next subdivision. So if I drop the resolution in half, so it was at 64, I'm going to set it to 32. Let's do a little smooth here and remesh. I'm going to get a quarter of what I had before, right? So my goal is to lose as little detail as possible through this process. So now when I unfreeze my subdivision level, it's going to project that stored detail back onto this mesh. It's only 1.2 million polys, so it shouldn't take that long. There we go. So now I'm back up to 338. So now I'm going to subdivide again, step down to my lowest subdivision, freeze subdivision levels, and I really want to keep an eye on my digits here. The digits are sort of like your linchpin in this process as far as Dynamesh is concerned, because if you go too low on Dynamesh, things start fusing together in here and produce some really cruddy results, and you have to go back and fix it, and it's not fun. So let's go now to 16. And this is going to bring us down into Z-remesher range. I'm going to check my digits, make sure that we're cool. I got a little bit of webbing there, but I think I can live with that. I'm kind of losing my eye cavities. So I don't know if I'm going to go a full half down. Let's go 24. Let's try that. That's a little bit better. So the reason why I want to kind of hold the shape of the eyes as much as possible is because Z-remesher is going to look at that and it's going to try and determine the movement in this area, and without the structure there, my topology won't reflect that movement, right? Because our goal is to get ordered topology, right? Right now we have loose topology, we want ordered topology. So Dynamesh down to 24. I'll probably shoot up to about, let's see. It's going to shoot up a little over 400,000. Can I define what ordered topology is versus loose or unordered topology? All right, ordered topology, when you look at a riggable character, oh, I went way over 770,000. I totally screwed up my maths. Ordered topology versus loose topology. This is unordered topology right now. All right, I say that because it has very little, like the flow of the geometry has very little relationship to the shape. It's just there to kind of like hold things in place. It's a mesh, right? But when you need to rig a model, it needs to have a specific flow, right? Because then those pieces actually have to move and they have to deform. So you need specific amount of edge loops or a specific flow to your edge loops that run around, say, the eyes or the mouth. Right? You want circular geometry that runs in through here, circular geometry that runs in through here. You want cylindrical geometry that runs in through the neck and the limbs. And then you have specific geometry that you're looking for in the hands. You know, and this is really this first week is really about, you know, what can we do with Z-remesher? All right, but we'll move beyond that. And I'll go into ordered topology a little bit more specifically in the retopology process. Does that help you out a little bit, Justin? All right, yeah, no problem. All right, so let's go ahead and one more subdivision, and this is going to be, let's see, this is going to be our second to last pass. We're going to do 2 Z-remesher passes now. I'm going to start with, you know, let's see if we can do this in one, because I went a little higher than I had anticipated. So I think that with what we have, let me step back and make sure I created that higher. You know what? Yeah, it should be fine. Free subdivision level. I am going to go to Z-remesher now. And Z-remesher is what's going to give us some decent ordered topology. Now this isn't ideal ordered topology, but it's functional, right? How many of you used Z-remesher before, as far as like in depth using Z-remesher, as far as assigning? I don't want to waste your time if you've gone through this. With colors and curves, yes. Thank you, Christian. Nope, not me. I've used it. Well, this might be a little bit of redundancy for some of you who've gone a little bit deeper. It looks like most people have not used it a whole lot. Let's see. Just a small question. Is there something you do to keep reducing the amount of polys yet retain the details? I mean, instead of using projection workflow. I mean, there's a couple different ways. I typically use some form of projection, right? So I usually Dynamesh up to a highest subdivision or a high poly count, build in my lower subdivisions with Dynamesh and Z-remesher, and then use free subdivision, which projects your details back up. I encounter fewer errors doing it that way. You could use projection on a separate subtool, work on a separate subtool without having to use free subdivision. Then you project as you subdivide on that new mesh. That's another way of doing it. And those are really the two that I would recommend, because I think everything else is a little bit slow. It's a little bit sluggish. But as far as if you've had problems with projection, if you go to the subtool palette and you go into project, and this is with free subdivision 2, you have this function, right? The project function, which when you have, say, a separate subtool or a duplicate subtool, you could transfer details from one visible mesh to another. This projection distance is really your friend, right? If you're having problems with like areas where geometry is really close to itself and it's projecting across both sides, or projecting, poorly, and you get like stray verts or stray points that are shooting off into nowhere or shooting off into the interior of the mesh, try reducing your projection distance, and that might produce a better result for you. It depends. Here's I don't think I could say that, like, I could see why Joseph would say that. In my own experience, sometimes 0.1 doesn't cut it, because if your base mesh, so like if you're creating a new mesh and you're projecting onto something that is a little bit further away, like the distance between the difference between the meshes is larger, you'll want to increase that cage, right? So you'll want to go, okay, I want 0.03. And you can mask off specific areas and just project in that area, right? Now, in this situation, 0.02 is okay. If I end up getting some misprojections, I might jump down to 0.01. Right? But it's about getting the geometry as close as possible. Once you get it in the ballpark, yeah, you can start reducing your distance, and 0.1 will work great. But I'd say, this isn't. I wouldn't, just like the resolution question. It's all determined upon what you're actually doing. Yes, Manuel, exactly. Yes, it's all about the cage of projection, right? It is all about the cage of projection.